Frida Langer, also in 1950. So, as I said, the last case I'm going to talk about is Frida Langer, who disappeared just 16 days after Paul Jepson had vanished on the 28th of October 1950. Ms. Langer, 53, and her cousin Herbert Elsner left their family campsite near the Somerset Reservoir to go on a hike. During the hike, Langer slipped and fell into a stream. She said to Elsner,
"If you wait here, I'll go back to the campsite, change clothes, and then catch up with you again."
When she did not catch up with him, Elsner himself made his way back to the campsite, only to discover that Frida Langer had not returned back to the campsite either, and that nobody had seen her since they left the campsite earlier that day together. Over the next 2 weeks, 5 extensive searches were conducted, involving aircraft, helicopters, and up to 300 volunteer searchers. No trace of Frida Langer was found during any of the 5 searches. On May the 12th, 1951, 6.5 months later, her body was found 3.5 miles from the camp at the Somerset Reservoir in the East Branch of the Deerfield River, an area that had only been lightly searched 7 months previously. Unfortunately, no cause of death could be determined because of the decomposed condition of her remains. Frida Langer was the last person to disappear. There have been no direct connections that have been identified trying any of these cases together, other than the general geographic area and time. And don't forget, I have only told you about the five most popular cases, strange and weird disappearances that they are. There were many more cases, but I can't find out the full, final, official total. But it is certainly worth looking further into at some time in the future. After a short break, we will look further at the Bennington Triangle and investigate it further with some of the theories behind the disappearance.
This show is brought to you by courtesy of Neil Packer and the Haunted Antiques Paranormal Research Centre. You can find them online or at 9-11 Regent Street, Hinckley, LE10 1AW. They are open on Saturdays from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. for guided tours of the haunted rooms in the building. You can book a tour of the haunted rooms of the Paranormal Research Centre for just £3 per person. Over 16s only, please, unless accompanied by an adult. Booking is essential at all times for a tour. Anyone who enters the haunted rooms does so knowing that they are extremely haunted and that paranormal activity could take place at any time during the tour. Some people may find certain areas within the building and particular items quite scary and unnerving. The Haunted Antiques Gift and Craft Shop is open daily from Monday to Saturday from 9:30 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Why not pay them a visit? The shop sells a wide variety of paranormal items, books, magazines, and merchandise. Membership is available for only £25 to qualify for selective discounts on your purchases. And why not download their app for only $3.99, available on iOS and Android, to keep up to date with what's coming up at the centre.
We will now start off with some Glastenbury history. And if you've just tuned in, I don't mean Glastonbury, UK. We are looking at Glastenbury within the Bennington Triangle in North America, USA. Glastenbury has been slated as a ghost town since its very first day in 1761. Mr. Benning Wentworth drew the boundaries and borders of the town on a map without ever going there. The area had rough terrain and made growing crops very difficult So settling there was an uphill battle right up to the 1800s, literally. There were technically two towns, Fayetteville and South Glastenbury, on either side of the mountain, but they were never actually connected due to the impossible incline between the two of them. Glastenbury was first established as a logging and mining town. Workers were brought up by railroad to log and mine the coal. The logs and coal were then sent down to the Bowles Brook stream, which forked near the town and flowed down the mountain. Both industries relied on finite resources of the area that then quickly dried up. In 1894, a final push was made to try to reinvigorate the town of Glastenbury by turning it into a tourist hotspot. All the buildings of the towns were renovated and reinvented as hotels and casinos. No expense was spared, but unfortunately, the extreme logging of the past left the mountainside extremely unprotected from soil erosion, and in 1897, just 3 years later, a massive flood destroyed much of the railway track in Glastenbury. No more attempts were made to reinvent the town. They had spent everything they had, and people began leaving the area to start over elsewhere, leaving the town with a rapidly dwindling, aging population. Trivia time. According to Ripley's Believe It or Not, they documented that in 1930, the Martison family's 3 members made up the entire town of Glastenbury by themselves and held every office available between them. As of the 2010 census, a mere 8 people in total live there, and according to Google, as of 2022, they still live there. So, some theories. It's stated in Joseph A. Citro's 1996 book, Passing Strange, True Tales of New England Hauntings and Horrors, that Native Americans refuse to set foot on Glastenbury Mountain unless they are burying their dead. They believe that the whole mountain was cursed land because the 4 winds met there in an internal struggle. While a lot of people refer to this as a myth, there may be some truth to it. The wind pattern on Glastenbury Mountain is very erratic, so much so that the weather changes very suddenly and the plants grow at odd angles. Strange lights in the sky, sounds with no explanation, and strange smells on the mountain all predate colonial settlements. These reports and all the many strange disappearances have led to the speculation of UFOs and wormholes in and around the town area. Bigfoot. Still one of the strangest reports may be of the Bennington monster. Thought to be an early Bigfoot, or otherwise known as Sasquatch, the monster has been described as well over 1.8 meters or 6 feet tall, with hair from its head to its toes. It was first sighted in the early 19th century when it attacked a stagecoach on a washed-out road. The beast knocked the stagecoach onto its side and ran off, letting out a big roar, although thankfully no one was harmed. In 1967, reports of a somehow less pleasant monster started to appear. The wild man of Glastenbury lived in a cave near Somerset. Unfortunately, he didn't stay there all the time, but regularly wandered out to amuse himself. Reports say that he would descend the mountain in nearby Glastenbury and other settlements in the Bennington Triangle area, just to harass the women. He accomplished this by pulling open his old coat to reveal his nude body while waving his gun around to scare off anyone who might want to stop him. Apparently that's all he seemed to do before running back to his cave. There were, however, more strange things happening in the Bennington Triangle that were little more subtle than a big ape man or gun-wielding hairy flasher. This conversion to a tourist town took its toll on the loggers and miners, and in 1892 a sawmill worker, Henry McDowell, drunkenly bludgeoned a co-worker to death with a rock after he heard voices telling him to attack. He was committed to an asylum but managed to escape and do a disappearing act, never to be seen again. We'll move forward another 5 years after that murder to 1897, and another strange incident followed. John Harbour was a prominent Woodford citizen who went into Bigfoot Hollow just south of Glastenbury to do some hunting. He was shot by an unknown person and was found with his gun fully loaded just lying next to him on the ground, and he appeared to have been dragged several yards. Those who investigated his death were left wondering why he had been so easily shot when he had a fully loaded gun of his own, and why his assailant would bother to put the gun next to him after he dragged him away from the spot where he fell. To this day, the case has gone unsolved and will probably stay that way forever. Serial killer? Some have said due to the pattern of the disappearances, it could be a serial killer at large. All the people who vanished did so within the winter months, which suggested that something other than chance was at play. However, there are a few problems with this explanation. First, Langer and Rivers went missing on the mountain close to their friends, so it would be extremely risky for a serial killer to abduct someone with their friends being so near, and certainly within earshot anyway. Secondly is the fact that the victims don't follow a particular pattern. Most serial killers tend to have a type. It would be extremely rare for one to pick up 2 elderly men, an 18-year-old woman, an 8-year-old boy, and a 53-year-old woman. An opportunistic killer. They would be taking a huge risk grabbing Rivers or Langer where they were, what with them being so near to their companions. UFOs or alien abduction. Probably the most interesting explanations are the paranormal ones. It's hard to judge which is the most paranormal normal. The disappearances, coupled with strange lights approaching and appearing and sounds being heard, are what probably led to UFOs and alien abduction theories in the area. But, like most things, when it comes to the paranormal, you need proof and substance. When newspapers first reported on the Bennington Triangle phenomena, most of the explanations were tied into Native American legends. In the 1990s, a lot of explanations shifted to UFOs, cryptids and the like, due to the popular TV show The X-Files. In the early 2000s, the myths circled back round to Bigfoot and the Bennington Monster. Practical explanations. There are, of course, some practical explanations that have been found, and although they can make sense, they are not entirely satisfying to draw any conclusion from. Hypothermia. Temperatures on the mountain can drop very low at times, especially overnight, and all the disappearances that took place in the winter, when experiencing hypothermia, some people might engage in what's called terminal burrowing. This is a natural survival technique that drives people to find someplace small to huddle away. It gets people out of the wind and may provide enough warmth to help slow the process of freezing to death. But it usually kicks in too late and just makes it harder for the person to be found after the event. Unmarked mine shafts. The mountainside is littered with these shafts and may cause hikers who go off trail to plummet to their deaths. This could explain why some missing people are never found. If the people perished from hypothermia or fall, why was Langer's body moved back into the open air months later? And why did Jepson's trail end at the highway? Maybe the most practical answer is that not all of them died in the same way. Some may have met with a killer, while others burrowed themselves away or fell to their deaths. But if this is the case, why did the disappearances span only 5 years and stop so abruptly? Today, a lot of dedicated hikers seek out challenging trails, like the long trail that spans 439 kilometers. That's 200